Okay, everyone, welcome to the Brand.bar Happy Hour chat. I'm Angela St. Julien, and I'm on this afternoon with Monte Cahn. Monte has been working in the domain name industry since 1995. He has founded and or held executive positions in companies such as Moniker.com, Snapnames.com, and DomainSponsor.com. Currently, Monte is the co-founder and president of Right of the Dot LLC, a consulting firm that specializes in TLD strategies. Thanks for coming on with us, Monte.
Thank you very much, Angela, for having me again.
That's right. Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah.
So before we get started, though, I hope that you don't mind. I'd like to share some updates from our sponsors.
Of course.
NamesCon is well over 400 attendees, registered attendees already, and expected to exceed 1,000 this year. So if you haven't signed up or gotten your tickets, jump in there because it's going to be a blast. They're cooking up a new networking event for Domain Fest at NamesCon for that first Sunday, January 10th, where small companies can exhibit for the day. I believe that's between noon and 6 p.m. So it's supposed to work like a cross between the startups, how the startups exhibit at Collision Conference and the meat market that is done at the affiliate summit. If you're interested in taking part in that, all you have to do is send an email to richard@namescon.com. And also, it is still business as usual over at escrow.com, everyone. So they will continue to operate independently of freelancer and remain down in California. Their transition offers more resources for their customers and more opportunities for their employees. If you're building or maintaining your own marketplace, you definitely want to go check out their new Express Cart Buy It Now buttons. They're very easy to use. I use them, and everyone knows I'm a little challenged when it comes down to development. They're very easy to use. You just simply copy and paste an HTML code or link. All right, so let's get down to gTLDs. Monte, I always like to ask for people who are either not working in the domain industry, but maybe curious or just entering the industry for an explanation, I guess, of whatever our topic is. Can you tell us what exactly is a gTLD?
So G stands for generic, and TLD stands for top level domain. So that's basically what a gTLD is. There's a lot of there's a lot of crossover between what people call gTLDs, and I'm sure some people have heard of the term STLDs. Those are a little bit different. Those are special TLDs like .arrow and .museum and .military and .edu. .mil. Those are STLDs, which have restrictions tied to them. There's several TLDs that are in this round of new TLDs being launched that are really STLDs, even though they're being called gTLDs. So, for example, .insurance and .bank are really STLDs because they're restricted to only the banking and insurance industry. And same with some of the other TLDs, like you can even call .nyc. Whoops, I heard it unmuted.
Sorry.
.nyc is restricted to only residents of New York or the 5 boroughs. So even though it's a gTLD, a generic top-level domain, it does have some restrictions to them. So it could be classified in STLD.
Okay. So also, too, before we continue, anyone who's on with us on mobile, you'll need to mute yourself on your end. I'm unable to mute you from my control panel. So do that for me, and that will help keep some of the outside noise outside. Okay, so now that we know what it is, I guess I'm wondering, who is the target audience? Is this for domainers who are working on their portfolios, investing, or is this actually for the end user?
So I'll tell you two perspectives. If I'm the TLD registry, like a dot bank or dot insurance, I'd want the end users, of course, to come in and register those because domain investors are not bringing me much value on those.
Okay.
If I'm .club, however, I want both end users and I want domain investors. I want people to share in the upside of the potential growth and opportunity of those domain names. But I also want good anchor tenants that are using my domain name so that others see value in it and show it increasing in value. The target for this round of TLD now is about 630 new TLDs that have launched since this new expansion. All the registries are trying to get end users and the new investment community on board because the current investors who are deeply invested in the .coms see this as potentially a threat to their value of their inventory. I'll give you reasons why I don't think that's true in a long-term play. But trying to get somebody to change their .com to a new TLD is a lot harder than trying to get somebody who hasn't registered one before to register a new TLD. So that's the target audience, in my opinion. Oh, there you
go. Okay.
New users are the primary target, and those could be investors, domain investors, but primarily end users and core end users. And that's why you're not seeing it take off like wildfire because there's an education and transition process for that. And I'll give some anomalies and some similar events in history that show that this is going to probably have a good chance to succeed and why some domain names are going to be very valuable someday.
Okay. So let's talk about the investment side of it for some domainers. What should we be looking for when we're choosing a gTLD to invest in? And I guess how long should we expect to hold that for it to mature?
So that's a good question and something that some of that is unknown because we don't know how much awareness is going to be built up around the world over time. But my gut tells me it's going to take just as long as it took for .coms and other extensions to grab on. And we're thinking a 3 to 10 year time frame for the world to become aware and to recognize that these names have value. And of course, not all the names are going to have as much value as the others, just like in the current scenario where .biz is now a lot less valuable than a .com, and .net is becoming less valuable than a .org in many cases now because of .org still having a defined meaning of an organization or a nonprofit organization, and a lot of charities using those extensions, and not too many people using .net that are corporations anymore. The great opportunity, or the best thing for the future is that a lot of corporations are going to start using their TLDs that they registered for. So out of the 1,000 new TLDs that have been approved in this round, 1/3 of them, just call it 1/3, are corporations. So corporations like Nike, Hitachi, Sony, KMPG, Barclays Bank, big institutions with big advertising budgets. And Barclays has already made the switch, for example.
That's right.
And they've gone to .barclays. So instead of imagine having, barclaysbank.com/accounts or /savings or /investments, they're now going to be savings.barclays,
right.
account.barclays, investments.barclays. So it shortens their name. It puts their brand at the end of the string instead of a com, which no one knows really what com means. And it allows them to use email and communications with their brand at the very end, which is what you remember last, or what you remember. The last thing you remember is what's at the end of a sentence or what's at the end of a paragraph, or, those types of things. So that's the goal of that. Nike has also made the announcement that they're going to get rid of as many slashes as they can. So when you see Nike.com/shoes or /apparel or /sports or /marathon, now it's going to be shoes.nike. It makes much more sense. And they're going to be driven into portals. They're not going to get rid of their .com necessarily, but they're going to get really channeled and get their customers focused on channel buying, channel information, own that space, and put valuable keywords in front of their brand. That makes a lot more sense than putting their brand and a keyword together and then a .com, because again, com has no search engine value. So to them, that's more about branding and recognition. So how does this affect the general domainer? Well, when you start seeing a billboard or an advertisement on TV, or the big signs at golf tournaments and those types of things with Nike branded, or Barkley or Barclays Bank branded, and KMPG branded, then people are gonna start to get it. And my kids, our next generation of users, don't know the value of .com. Only we do, because we helped create the industry, or at least I can say that. You know what? We helped pioneer the industry. So com was the most valuable real estate. It was the first thing that came out. So it
Right.
is the legacy. It's what's known to the first 1,000 companies. But the next 1,000 companies, are going to be looking for alternatives that better meet their needs and have better definition and meaning. So when the companies, along with global awareness of what the Domain Name Association is doing, which is something I'm a part of in the marketing group, which is letting people know that there's another alternative besides .com, it's going to help raise the tidewater for everybody, including .com owners and new TLD owners. So the investment is great. The investment opportunity is great. If you have foresight and patience and some money, it's just like when Columbus landed on America, and the first 13 states were colonized, and that was the only thing that people knew until it got so crowded that people started expanding west. So people started expanding west, and they found all this valuable resources west, which they only thought was east.
Right.
So there's more farmland. People discovered gold all the way in California. People discovered oil in Texas. Um, there's millions of people that live in LA. There's still millions of people who live in New York. New York was established first before LA. There's valuable property that sells and still appreciating value in New York, even though there's now LA and Chicago and Houston and Miami and so on. So the same thing is happening with domain names. It's the best way to describe it. Another assimilation is, once upon a time, there was only one area code or one zip code. Now there's thousands of them, and somehow we figured out how to use them. And
That's
not
right.
not one zip code is more valuable than the other, or area code. And matter of fact, there's now multiple area codes in the same city to use on your cell phones because it got too crowded. When I grew up, 800 vanity numbers were the most valuable things a company could buy. When you had 800 buy cars, and it spelled it out so you can remember what the numbers were. So now there's 866, 877, 855, all these toll-free extensions. My kids don't understand what the value of an 800 number is, or a value of 866 numbers, because they have cell phones and every call they make is free. So the next generation of users are going to use them in the way that they want to use them. And if my son wants to be a lawyer, he's going to get a .law or a .attorney. He's not going to get a .com, because all the coms are taken. All that real estate is taken, just like when
Right.
people moved to New York. Now they live in other cities or live rural or abroad. So think of it that way. Think of it as virtual real estate. And it doesn't mean that the .com property becomes less value, especially the premium property. I would argue that long tail domain names are going to become less valuable with new TLDs in shorter strings and shorter combinations, or one word combinations will be a better alternative for everyone if you've stretched out a name in a .com over multiple words and letters, which creates confusion and potential for misspelling and all kinds of other things. So it makes more sense to have something with, to the left of the dot that has meaning, and to the right of the dot that has meaning, unless you have a really good .com.
Okay, and then I guess my next question was going to be, what should I look for personally if I'm thinking about investing in a GTLD? How should I how should I build it? Should it be one word to the left with the one word that's to the right, or should it be two? I mean, what is going to be my ultimate goal when I'm looking for something that's going to have real value in the future?
So if we move back to the comparison of .com, you could say anything to the left of the dot, because com didn't mean anything. So I could say, I want to buy bourbon.com. So com means nothing.
Right. Hmm.
What com really stands for is commerce, by the way. If I ask 1,000 domainers what com means, half of them will get it wrong. They'll think it stands for company, community, communication. I did it several times at conferences. Even long-standing domainers don't know what com stands for. So if they don't know what com stands for, it's not even a dictionary term. Doesn't have meaning in the search engines. So you have to describe what you do to the left of the dot as best as possible, and then that what drives your traffic and your keyword buying and your potential upside for building a website. But now with left of the dot and right of the dot words that you can put together, you now have the ability to have a linguistically driven search term that goes to the left and to the right of the dot that has meaning. So buy.cars may be in some cases better than buycars.com, or, Fort Lauderdale Hotels .com may not be as valuable as Fort Lauderdale .hotels. So things that make linguistic sense are the smart things to buy. Now, if I put, .club we really love, and we're a partner with .club, and we help sell their most valuable domain names, and we're a big believer in .club, for example, because almost any word to the left of the dot makes sense. There are car clubs, there's furniture clubs, there's carpet clubs, there's buying clubs, selling clubs, kids clubs, country clubs, golf clubs. You can go on, swim clubs. There's lots of words.
Right.
But swim.financial or finance doesn't make much sense. Or curtains.cars doesn't make any sense, because the word curtains and cars there's no curtains in cars unless you're in maybe a hearse. So,
Oh, goodness.
so I wouldn't buy names. My advice is I wouldn't buy names to the left of the dot that doesn't have good linguistic flow to the right of the dot and good meaning. Because in the future, that's what's going to make logistical sense to an internet user, and it makes sense to the search engines in the long run. And by the way, the biggest search engine, applied for 100 new TLDs, is going to operate 35 or 40 of them. And so they're obviously going to have algorithms that make sense to the left and to the right of the dot,
Right.
because they have an invested interest in them themselves.
Right.
Same with Amazon, by the way, too. So they have 30 some odd TLDs they're going to be running. So they're going to make them work in their search engines.
All right. Okay. So what about, and I guess I'm going to mention short and numeric domains for just a minute, because that's kind of a trend we've been seeing the last couple months or so. What about these new gTLDs used with, like, say, one letter or two letters, any numbers? Should we think about that, or is it too soon for that? There's really no value in the long run. What do you say with regards to that?
Well, my philosophy in the domain investing business and selling business is that shorter the better, and less chance for misspelling and all that kind of stuff. And because the right of the dot words actually are much longer than .com in most cases,
Right.
that's the other side. So you have the chance to misspell something to the left of the dot and to the right of the dot. Now, with that said, the two-letter and three-letter and two-number, three-letter combination names have been selling mostly to the Asian and Chinese market, and some brands that have them in stock symbols and other things. I still think they're a good investment in new TLDs because, again, shorter is better, and they're going to stand for a lot of acronyms in new companies. So double letters, double numbers. The number letter combinations, unless it's like A1 or, things you hear commonly that have meaning, but in the Chinese industry, certain numbers are more valuable than others, like 8s and 7s and 9s, but 4s aren't, because it means death or dying. But 8s are lucky, and then combination of 8s. I've been told, 5 8s are better than 2 8s, because it means you're that lucky that many more times, but doing it 10 times doesn't make sense. So that kind of thing. But A1 or, double A's, double letters, those types of things, or of course acronyms for, things that we say, words, to, go, if, is, those types of things always have been valuable, that spell out things. And a good way to look at that is look at some of the previous domain sales and see what letter number combinations, or double letters, double numbers, or combinations have sold in .com as value. They're worth some fraction of that in new TLDs until the world catches on.
Right.
And 3 to 7 years from now, they're going to be more valuable then than they are now. So now's a good time to buy the raw land, and in 3 to 7 years, it might be more developed land. Of course, if you put something on it and you drive traffic to it and you start to turn it into a real business, it becomes more valuable. And it's, again, easier for your friends and family and customers to remember if it's shorter, even if it doesn't stand for anything.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question. When is the right time to invest? You have the argument going that, hey, if it does catch on, if people do love them, I'll invest later on. I don't need to go and invest right now. What do you say to that? Do you get the good ones now? Can you still get the great ones later? How would you approach it?
Well, it all depends on what your budget is and what you're looking to do. I think that new TLDs are long-term holds. They're long-term plays. Just like in the very beginning when I registered my first domain name in 1995, there was no Google, there was no Yahoo, there was no banner advertising. I strictly bought those names, that first 1,000 names, on the premise that it was just like a piece of real estate, and someday that real estate is going to run out. And so my name's going to become more available. The concept of Google wasn't even in my head because there was no Google then. So now you have the benefit of search engines, keyword buying, companies being built and apps being built every day. And, the internet traffic is going to quadruple and internet users are going to double in the next 5 years. So that's a fact. And so they're going to need names. They're going to need more real estate. They're going to need more email. They're going to need more hosting. They're going to need more communication vehicles online to communicate. More and more cities are putting broadband, free broadband in cities like Nairobi, Kenya is, wiring their whole entire city, with broadband, free broadband. So when their civil war is done, they can invite companies to come back in and reinvest, and they're going to offer that as a benefit so that people don't have to pay for internet. Those types of things are happening in other cities around the world. So it's got to be a long-term play. You have to have a budget, and you have to be prepared to, hold on to what you're buying over time. Of course, you can always offer it for sale, and there are some names selling. We're selling some in the new TLDs, but think of it as this is the gold rush of the dot-com era back in 1994, 5, and 6. And things didn't really catch fire until 99 and 2000, and then there was a bust, and then it really caught on again in 2001, 2, and 3. There's another recession in 2005, another recession in 2007. There's ebbs and flows, but then it can't, then the internet stabilized and even got bigger, and that's what's going to happen. The internet's going to get bigger, and the internet gets bigger in both users and traffic. The value of domain names and in most extensions are going to go up somewhat in value. The other thing to look at when you're investing is look at the registry operator behind it. That's important. So there's a lot of registries that are well funded that have raised, capital and are here for the long term. Donuts is one of them. Their strings have a better chance to succeed in my opinion than, something that's obscure and, one example is HIV. Turned out it's not succeeding and it's going to go up for auction. Somebody's going to buy it, but it's all for a nonprofit. The idea and the concept was great, but the general public's not buying HIV names. But Donuts has, 100 and some odd extensions are going to run. A lot of them have a lot of legs and they have a big budget behind them. They haven't even started marketing yet. They're probably waiting for some of the big companies to start marketing their TLDs, and then they're going to start jumping on the bandwagon. .global is a great extension also. It's run by one operator, but again, well-funded with one TLD. So is .club with one TLD, well-funded. They raised money. They have a plan in place. They're here for the long haul. Some registries might not be as well-funded. Right Side, public company, has 30 some odd TLDs. They're well-funded. Radix, several TLDs in place. .space, .tech, .web, .website, a lot of core generic terms that we use every day.
Right.
A lot of them be very successful as alternatives to .com, in my opinion. Daniel Nagari's extension .xyz, even though a lot of people think it's silly, it's going to succeed because it serves a generation that it's not that important whether it's a .com. They use a .xyz at a lesser amount.
And it is memorable.
Yeah, I wouldn't launch a Fortune 500 company off of it, but for the common user who wants to use it for an email or something, it's good. It's a good alternative, or a small business, it's a good alternative, .pizza, that's going to be, stuff like that. If I'm a pizza parlor, I want .pizza. I don't want something obscure, So
right.
I would look at those as investment opportunities for the future, have lots of patience, and companies like mine are doing a good job in really starting to get aftermarket sales, so it helps you regardless of what your inventory is. The more transactions there are, the better it is for the whole industry.
Okay. So I guess I want to ask you an end user question. How would you market this? If you've decided let's just say you couldn't afford to grab the .com, it's unavailable, someone wants a lot for it, but you see that there is a new gTLD opportunity and you could use it. How do you market this where your customer base understands what you're doing or knows how to reach you? What do you do?
So I'll give you a good example. A year ago, we put on the .global live domain auction at ICANN, and it was the first live auction we did for a new TLD, and it was in London. And there was lots of great names like banking.global and autos.global that sold. We sold a bunch of names. But one client I sought out was, it was a three-letter domain. It was called IDW. And they are a refrigeration company, second in their market space. They're the ones who a long time ago invented the branded little refrigerators you see at in shopping centers for Red Bull and for
Okay.
Monster. They have the branding on the side of the refrigerators,
Right.
and they warm refrigerators with the school logo, those types of things. And they're now a global business. It wasn't, they were kind of like a U.S. based business, but now they're a global business, and they had this name IDW-US.com to say that they
Mm,
were in the U.S. They couldn't get IDWUS.com because it wasn't available. They couldn't get IDW.com because it was not available and it was outside their budget.
absolutely.
When Dot Global, when that name became up for auction, I looked at all these names, all these companies with IDW in them. I found this company, and they're like, "Oh, this is perfect. We've expanded globally already. We want our customers to know we're global. Having global at the end of our name makes a lot of sense to us." So they bought IDW.global in auction for $5,000, where they would have to spend 50 to 75,000 for the .com maybe, or whatever. But the dash in the U.S., everybody got it screwed up. They used it in their email. Just imagine that
Mm,
IDW-US.com and an email address. People missed the dash. They didn't understand what the hyphen was. Where's the
that's
hyphen on your
right.
keyboard? You know, all that stuff. So what they started to do was they started to lightly they sent out information to their clients saying, hey, we've changed our name. They took their main site, idw-usa.com, and they did a 301 redirect to idw.global. So now there's a 301 redirect. So all their search engine stuff that they ever did, and I've never measured their site, so I don't know how well they did, but they don't lose any of that when they 301 redirect their old site to their new site. And the next step and next phase is they're changing their email addresses, of course. And now it'll be at the end of their email address, idw.global, instead of the dash in USA. Um, they're sending to all their affiliates. They're making announcements. They're buying the keywords already. They're spending a couple $1,000s a week on keyword buying for those particular terms, IDW and global, to help feed that traffic into their site. And now they're starting to sell to the end user public, where before they were just selling to distributors and affiliates. So similar things can be done
Okay.
if you're a company, a small business, an end user. If you're a domain investor, probably the best thing you can do instead of just letting it sit there, because parking is not a viable option for you today because there's no traffic
That's right.
yet, because the world doesn't know about the new extension. So you're not going to get natural typing traffic from it. So you either have to drive traffic through keyword buying, or develop a website that gets seeded in the search engine and start selling a product, service, or offering a link or information. And that will help build value and a foundation for that particular site so that it gets seeded. And new TLDs are getting seeded very well in search engines. There's been several examples of that, where they're showing up on the front page because of the right and the left of the dot extension making sense with each other, especially the geo stuff. That's working out really well. .London names, .NYC names, for .Berlin names are all seeding very well in search engines because of the geo factor.
All right. That was really a great answer. I'm sure the end user would appreciate that. Now, before I let you go, because I know you have another conference call to jump on,
I'm
I
okay for
I did get another list. I mean, I got a list of some names that some would like to know. Should they keep? We know these are supposed to be long-term holds if they're really going to make any money, but should they drop or should they keep? And I'm going to throw some at you here. First one is cat.condos. So cat condos.
Condos is it sounds like a good name because that's a hot retail item. There's the kitty condos and the cat condos, which are those towers that the cats have the little holes in them and they
Right.
live in them. Right. So again, my philosophy on new TLDs, this is my belief, and it makes logistical sense and logical sense, is that if the name to the left of dot goes and flows with the one to the right of dot, it's probably a decent first view, reason to hold on to the name. Now, unless it's a premium price name that has a high renewal rate and you're not, if you're just going to sit on it and you can afford to do that, that's one thing. If you can't afford to sit on it and you're expecting to flip it in the next year or two, then I suggest that you think about alternatives, because this is not a short-term play. It's a long-term play unless you have a really valuable keyword left and right of the top. in my
And it could
opinion.
actually be really quite costly if you have those high premiums for renewals. I want to say that because I want to be responsible with this chat. People should know you have to have the budget necessary if you're going to do this, if you're going to hold these. What about fantasy fishing? Fantasy dot fishing.
Well, the fantasy football and fantasy baseball are popular things. I've heard that they're doing fantasy fishing now, so it's probably something a good future investment.
Okay. And I've got two clubs here, enlisted dot club and quidditch dot club.
Quibbage,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So Quibbage makes sense, but invest. What was the other one? Enlisted.
Enlisted.
Yeah. So enlisted club doesn't it doesn't make linguistic sense to me. So I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah,
Um,
I really don't know if that's if what I'm thinking is what the person who has registered is thinking, but maybe enlisted soldiers or military personnel. I mean,
oh, yeah,
enlisted,
yeah. I didn't think of that. Yes, that could be it.
possibly. I don't
For
know.
the enlisted, yeah, it could be enlisted for people in the military. Yeah.
Yeah, possibly.
Again, almost the good thing about club is that almost every word makes sense to the left of the dot.
Yeah.
You know, almost every time. If you think about it, there's
Okay.
not too.
Now, what about something more like product wise? Say gel dot technology.
Well, I'm not an expert on the gel technology, but there's a offshoot of gel technology, and people are using gelatin and gel. I forgot what it's called. It conducts electricity, so it could be a future thing, just like nanotechnology was back in the day. So nanotechnology, makes a lot of sense. I used to have a client, Bill Gormley, who still shows up at the shows and stuff. He used to invest in the nano names back in the early 2000s before nanotechnology was even in existence, but he started reading technology magazines and saw about the future. So he registered all these nano names and ended up doing pretty well by selling them, when it became popular technology. So those types of things are long-term holds, I think. And then when gel technology becomes really popular, somebody's going to want to buy something like that, you know.
Okay, so everything I listed here, was there any that you would drop, or would you renew them all if they were yours?
Well, I face drop and hold decisions all the time. I look at a number of different because I helped pioneer the whole appraisal system for the entire industry years and years ago. So I look at other concepts and other things. I look at what industry it's in, how popular that industry is in,
Hmm.
whether the keyword makes sense, what like names and .com have sold for in that particular and other extensions before I make a decision on whether to drop or hold something. And then, as long as it's a reasonable hold fee and I can look out 5 to 10 years and I think of it in that light, then I'll hold on to it. If it's something I'm just paying for renewals over and over again, I never get an offer on it. Now I'm talking about .coms and .nets maybe. Never got an offer on it, and just something I was attached to and thought it would mean something someday. Those are the names I'm letting go and dropping, and they get very little type in traffic. With new TLDs, there's not a lot of type in traffic, so you have to play what I did back in 1995, and that is pretend there were no search engines, pretend there is no monetization vehicles at first, and you're just buying the name for the potential of flipping it one day because someday that name is going to be popular because they're going to be out of space or it's going to be, less supply and more demand. And that's how I made my original purchase decisions on domain names back in the mid 90s because there was no other way to look at it. There was no monetization of domain names back then other than flipping them and selling them. So I would look at that as a flashback to 1995. Think of the names you're buying today and think that there's no other way to make money on them. Is it a good real estate buy? If you can envision going outside your city and buying another piece of land somewhere in another city or in the mountains or by the lake or on the beach or in Canada or in the middle of the desert, which people thought were crazy when Las Vegas was invented, will that be valuable someday? And that's how I'd make the decision today on new TLDs with in the background thinking, oh, well, there is Google, there is Yahoo, there is search engines, there is advertising, there is ways to drive traffic, there is ways to buy keywords that can enhance that decision even better.
Okay.
That's the way I look.
On the spot question. What is a reasonable renewal fee for you, and what is an unreasonable renewal fee if you're thinking of long-term hold?
So, so Michael and I, my partner, we went and invested in a lot of the dot poker names because we're pretty bullish on how dot poker is going to play out in the gambling
Mm-hmm.
world, and having the knowledge and just selling a lot of big domain names in the poker industry and the gambling industry. So, we bought some premiums with premium pricing on an annual basis, and I'm not up for spending thousands of dollars on an annual basis for that particular name. But now I'm not a company or corporation that relies on that brand for my future. So I would look at it as a 10-year investment. So if I think it's $1,000 name, is it worth $100 a year? Yes. If I can envision what the value of that name is, over a 10-year period, and then think of it about the renewal fees for that particular time frame, that's the way I look at it in a 10-year window.
Okay.
So $100 for the right name over 10 years isn't bad for a lot of the names that we own. $1,000 for those names, for maybe a handful of those names makes sense, but not too many of them, especially if I don't think I'm going to launch a product or service off of it. I'm looking at it as probably a flip play
I
in the
see.
future.
Okay.
So
So,
take your renewals. My advice is to everyone is take the renewals, times it by 10 years. Is that name a $500 name, and is it worth $50 a year? And set aside that money in your budget to pay for that name over 10 years. And what could you do with that name in the next 1 to 3 years to help get some of that money back? And then it becomes a net benefit. And then is there a good possibility that you could potentially sell it in 5 to 7 years? And if so, how much more valuable would it be in 10 years? And then chances are, if you make those types of decisions in advance, you'll end up in the plus column and not with a big, huge debt
right.
if you have that 10-year plan in place.
Okay, Monty, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that you've spent with us this afternoon. I'm just going to look over here in the chat window and see if anyone left any questions for us.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's somebody asked, somebody wanted to know what com meant. It means commerce, just so everybody knows.
right.
It means international commerce, by the way, which means to do profit internationally for business. So if you're a dentist in Miami, having a .com is not probably the right domain for you because you're not an international commerce player. That's what com means. So I would rather get my dentist name .miami when it comes out, or .dentist or something like that. Somebody said, is there strategies to selling new TLDs, i.e. some of the new TLD auctions? So as a matter of fact, you mentioned NamesCon as a good plug. We're going to do the second live domain auction at NamesCon. January 11th is the day, and it's going to be from like 2 to 5 o'clock or something, 2 to 6 o'clock. It's going to be for half the afternoon. And we will be positioning super premium new TLDs along with .coms in that auction again. And yes, there's a market for it. We sold 60% or 66% of all the names we had up for sale in the last live auction. And more than 60% of those were new TLDs. And 50% of those went to end users. So,
Wow.
and so we did a lot of marketing to end users, and a lot of end users stepped up and bought those names, which is good. And a bunch of those are already using them. So, the biggest new extension that was sold in that auction was wine.club, and it will be used by a big end user that you guys will see in the next probably 6 months to compete in the 30,000 foot wine clubs of the world.
Wow.
Thanks. So yes, there. The live domain auctions that we do are probably a good vehicle because we're marketing to end users. NameJet is starting to do some focused new TLD auctions as well. I don't know how much marketing they're doing to end users, but I think they're doing some. So SnapName's starting to, and by the way, SnapNames was our back-end platform, which I created back when I ran the company for live auctions and online auctions. So, they all, market to their end user base. A lot of them, a lot of that is a wholesale market, but, there are some retail and end user buyers in those marketplaces. The brokers at Domain Holdings, which is now part of Flippa, reach out to end users all the time. I don't know how many new TLDs they're really hot on, but they're starting to get hotter, and I'm helping to help them get there because I'm an investor in that company as well. And I know Sea-Doo sold some new TLDs as well. And the Afternic/GoDaddy marketplace, which sells more domain names in the world, is going to be offering those as well. So there's plenty of places to list them. Just remember, listing services are more for wholesale buying. Brokerage services are more for retail and end user buying. Mm-hmm. But most brokers aren't going to take them on unless it's a really good combination word of premium domain name, because it has to be worth their while. They're getting a percentage of that commission, only a percentage of the commission the company's earning. So think of it that way.
Yeah.
So getting somebody to take it on while everybody's buying .com still, or why the Chinese market's buying two-letter .coms, and it's where everybody's focusing their time. But that's going to shift. It's very early still, so I think it's going to shift, over the next year to 2 years, and there's going to be a lot more TLD sold.
Now, so another question, is it worthwhile to register thousands of free domains like .science, .party, .webcam, it says?
All right, so here's the hook on that. The hook is that you're getting them free today, but next year there's going to be a renewal fee.
Renewals.
So you can buy as many as you want today. Chances of you selling any of them are slim because, again, the world hasn't opened up yet, and people are going to see that they're free, so why pay for them, even in the aftermarket, unless it's a kick-ass name, like a really good name. So that's your deal. So then come your anniversary year, all of a sudden there's going to be a fee and a cost. They're not going to be free next year. So it's using some of the same philosophy as, .xyz, where they, offered them 49 cents. And there's a .wang in China that, was selling them for 49 cents. And .top was doing the same thing. That's why they got all those registrations. They're hoping that some percentage, 10%, 20%, stick and then pay that renewal fee in that next year. And that's how that registry plans on making their money. So if you have a sale lined up for a name, go do it. Register the name and sell the name to the end user or the buyer, and because you got it first. Or if you think you're going to keep some portion of them and think that 10-year hold is, and I don't know what the renewal prices are going to be on Science and Party and Webcam, just think that they're going to be $20 on average. And think of it again, $20 times 10 years, $200. That's probably what you're going to end up paying in renewals.
Right. And
will be worth more than $200 within the 10-year period of time, each of them. So if you're talking about 1,000, you're not going to probably spend $200,000 on those names. But, you might spend a couple thousand on them if you have the budget and the money to do.
Okay. So thank you so much, Monte. I appreciate your time, and hopefully you'll come back and join us again.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime. And thank you, everybody, for listening in. And if anybody wants to contact me with other questions, they can hit me up at monte@rightofthedot.com.